Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Skool and I'm here to answer one simple question. WTF is the full armour Dussack Asy-Tac Fronteer EV-0006. This is a wonderful model kit from the company called Auldey. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And in the box, this wonderfully designed box, which has a lovely sleeve design to highlight the full armour Dussack naming convention, as you can see there. Contains 25 runners and one PC runner. So as you can see from the manual, we've got a lovely display of the actual kit and our group of runners. So what I'm going to try and do is go through this from a builder's perspective and also try and have a look at this as well from a potentially dismantling perspective, as if you're going to paint it as well. So this won't be a paint build just yet, but at this stage we have fully built the kit. So initially the kit will get you to build out the chest, as you can see here from these sort of larger pieces, and then basically we'll then put on the additional armor pieces around the outside. The difficult part with the chest here is around this element here, with these very tightly fitting joint pieces. The initial parts you put on there as it's described, and then afterwards you'll put on this very smaller piece and slot it through effectively the outer armor piece. So these two pieces can potentially be a bit of a break point, just because of the way they're designed. Moving on to the head unit is relatively simple. As you can see here, it's only a few phases. The stranger parts with this is to do with the way the fins on the head are slotted into the kit. So over here we've got a large extended piece which will go in, and again that when you press it in will fit and it will be fine, but obviously any wiggle elements that you do around this, especially when putting in these green clear pieces, will potentially have a break point as they'll move on the head. Then you move on to the abdomen area, and again this is similar to the chest. It's a rather central hollow piece, and then you place the armor on around it. And then you move on to the waist unit, and at this point this is where I personally found to have the first of a few issues with this particular kit, due to the way that some of the peg elements are actually designed. So for example, for this small piece here, and it is a relatively small piece, these joints here are incredibly thin. And the idea is that at the end of these joints there is a ball socket which will then go onto the waist armor. Any pressure on these elements will snap them off. So potentially you may either snap them off and need to require pinning by using brass rod to re-strengthen it back together, or being incredibly careful when you actually put this armor on as described in the instructions. So once you've got the waist unit together, again similar idea of creating the central piece of the kit and then placing on the armor pieces. Then we move on to the arms, and the arms are relatively simple. The difficult part with this to be aware of is around the design of the hands. These are very similar to the Bandai hands, of placing in different finger joints and a thumb, and then covering it with a piece of armor to hold all of these joints in. What I found was that the actual joint connections here, where the ball joints go into, are incredibly thin. And because most of this red plastic, as I've found as we've been going through the build, all the red plastic is incredibly thin and very easy to damage. So having potentially a finger joint using the same plastic is a bit of an issue. So once you build both the arms, then we move on to the shoulder unit. And the shoulder unit in itself again has a very similar problem as we saw on the waist armor. So over here we've got this element here that is again a piece of plastic with a ball joint on it. And using this ball joint, again, if you put any pressure on, which you need to do to actually apply the shoulder joint into that ball socket, again, will snap it off. So in the case of my kit, that's exactly what happened, and I had to repin this particular piece to re-strengthen it, place it back on, and then obviously put on the larger armour back onto that ball joint. So at the moment it appears to be secured, but it is something to be aware of just the way this kit is designed, especially around the ball joints. And obviously we create 2 shoulder units for both sides, and then we move on to the leg unit. The kit will start you off with building the feet first, and one at a time, the way it is designed in the kit, and then eventually working your way through the actual leg joint itself. Again, most of these elements are larger, hollow central parts of the inner armour, then covered up by the actual red and white armour over here. But again, as we've discussed before, is that the element that again is a problem with this kit is these small ball joints. So for example, on the ankle piece here, there is an element that again has a very small ball joint on the end, and this in this particular case, this piece of plastic is incredibly long, so any pressure you put on the end of that ball joint, which you need to do later on, is again going to snap that off. And I'll show you the instructions on here. There's the part, so you put that front bit of ankle armour onto that ball joint, and again, that any pressure or movement will potentially snap that piece off. So it is something to be aware of when you're building this kit. And then once you build the actual leg armour, you then have a separate element to build up the knee armour, and the knee armour on this particular kit is giant. It actually completely changes the look of the legs, and in some ways changes the look of the way this kit looks when it is being posed. So again, another leg, and the only variation here is on the actual thigh armour, because on one side you'll have an extra part that goes on that enables you to clip in the swords, whereas the other side of the waist does not. You also have this additional crossbow weapon, also has this cog element here, which basically allows both of these elements to move simultaneously when moved. So at the end of the guide, I'll take you through piecing all these bits together, and then we'll add in a final element of the actual neck piece as part of this final part. And so at the end of the guide, we get again another nice display of the kit and some information on its pilot. Again, I'm not familiar with the actual series, so sorry if there's no extra information I can give you on this one. And again, the end part of the kit. So as you can see here, this is what we have. We've got the kit completely built and the additional weapon. As I mentioned around the weapon, there is a cog piece which again allows this to open and shut simultaneously. I probably won't be using this on this particular kit. I quite like the samurai and swords vibe that this particular kit gives. So going over some of the points that I mentioned in the manual, the shoulder joint here, there's a ball joint that's underneath in there, which I've had to basically repin just so that this can actually stay secured on, same as this side. And as well, as I mentioned about the fins on the head, if we were to dismantle this, you can see that small amount of plastic is potentially a break point on here, because once you press in the clear pieces or you try to do anything with the head, you are putting pressure onto that plastic element. So this is very similar problems that I've found while building this, that are all related to movement points or pressure points with the joints. So here is the very small ball joint on the long piece of plastic, again for the waist element. So again, if you're moving the waist around, or you're actually taking this off maybe to dismantle it for painting, putting it back on again, you will apply pressure to this joint and potentially snap it. The other elements of design caution is around the kneecaps. So the kneecaps themselves will move independently because they're on effectively a rail that goes on the inside, and the way it's designed is that you're meant to be able to move these up and down, and again these are quite stiff, independently of the leg. So you can provide different looks to the leg, and I think in this case, yep, there we go. So there's part of the rail that's come off, and there's the actual rail. So that's quite good on video, we've got that on there. But as you can see, a lot of the way this is designed is usually around two pieces fitting together to create a potential point of breakage. So I'll try and put that back on if I can't. That's great, because this is all part of the experience of finding out what this kit can or can't do. So just try and slip that on, hopefully that will stay. So overall, the look of this kit is amazing. I personally will probably end up posing this as a statue after it is painted, and probably will never touch it again. The design is honestly very unique, especially in comparison to other Bandai kits I have in my collection. So as I mentioned, the plastic that's on this is incredibly easy to stress. So fortunately I'm painting this, or my intention is to fully paint this, so most of those stress marks will disappear. However, if you are a straight builder, this may be a problem or concern, or something that you need to basically take in mind before you start clipping this off the runners. So hopefully this has given you a good overview of the kit itself and potential issues you may find, and hopefully we'll be back with another one when it's fully painted. Thank you.